Hello everyone and welcome to the TradCast, the podcast that connects traditional archery enthusiasts. Today is episode number 14, and on today's show, I'm discussing traditional bow hunting tactics with Mitchell Glantz. This is going to be a great show. Let's jump right into it. Alright everyone, welcome to this week's TradCast, the podcast that connects traditional archery enthusiasts. Today is episode number 14, and once again I've got a great show in store for you today. In a few moments I'm going to be breaking to a recent interview I had with Mitchell Glantz. Mitchell is a very accomplished traditional bow hunter, and today on the show Mitchell is going to be sharing with us some success stories that he's had, and he's also going to be sharing with us some tactics that he uses which help make him a successful traditional bow hunter. I'm very excited to bring this interview to everybody. I think that we're all going to be able to take a few things from Mitchell's information which can help us in our own hunting. But before we get into that interview, I do want to give you guys just a couple of quick brief updates. Alright guys, now the first update I had for you is, as you can probably see here out the window, we do still have some snow up here in northern New York. We lost a little bit this past week, but we did have a couple of days that were down below freezing, and we actually got some snow just a couple nights ago. So we still have snow in the woods. We've got probably, I would say, still anywhere from 8 inches to maybe a foot still in some spots. So our snow melt this spring has just been very, very slow. And Old Man Winter just does not want to quit here in northern New York just yet. But I'm hoping that by next weekend, the vast majority of what's left will be gone, and I can start getting out into the woods and start doing some stump shooting. I want to do a lot of stump shooting this spring to help get me ready for spring turkey season, because I do plan, at least at some point during this spring turkey season, I want to hunt with my longbow. So I want to get out this spring and do a lot of stump shooting and help get ready for that. So hopefully our snow will go here by next weekend, but you never just can't tell up here. Winter always seems to hold on, till real late in the year. But another, not so much an update, but I just want to give a reminder to everybody, in case this is somebody's first time watching or listening to the podcast. For anybody that wants to listen in an audio-only version, you can do that, and there's two avenues. You can either find us on Podomatic.com, or you can listen to the podcast on iTunes. So those are your two ways to listen in an audio-only version, or you can watch us here on YouTube in the video format. So I wanted to bring you guys that update. And the only other real update I have for you guys is I just wanted to share with you something that I've been doing this past week that seems to be helping my shooting, and that's when I draw, I'm now coming to just a very brief static hold position before I release. I would say, I'm not timing this obviously, but I would say maybe a quarter of a second to maybe a half a second tops. I'm not really holding there. I'm drawing, and I'm just coming to a very brief hold up static position before releasing. And for whatever reason, it seems to be helping me become more accurate and a little bit more consistent. So I'm going to continue to work on that in the next coming weeks. And like I said, hopefully by next weekend I can start getting out and start doing some stump shooting. But in the woods right now, we still got enough snow where if I was to miss by a good distance, which I'm likely to do because I haven't shot beyond 10 yards yet. I just don't want to lose any arrows or risk losing a quiver full of arrows. So I'm going to wait until the snow is gone before I get out there and start doing my stump shooting. Plus, it's just going to be a lot easier to walk around through the woods that way. Because right now in the woods, when you're walking on this hard-packed snow, you'll take a couple steps and you'll be able to walk on top because it's frozen. And then you'll take a step and you'll sink down, up to your knees in snow. And it's just not just not very comfortable to be out there walking around in the woods right now. So I'm going to wait for our snow to go before I get out and do some stump shooting. But right now I want to jump over to the recent interview I had with Mitchell Glantz, where Mitchell is going to be sharing some stories with us and helping us with some traditional bow hunting tactics. I hope everybody enjoys the interview. All right, everyone. Like I mentioned, we've got a special guest on the line tonight. I am interviewing Mitchell Glantz, and tonight we're going to be discussing traditional bow hunting strategies. Welcome to the show, Mitchell.
Well, thanks, Chad, for having me. I'm Mitch Glantz from eastern Iowa, pretty much born and raised. Been shooting traditional archery exclusively since 2011, sold all the wheels, and went dedicated in 2011, and honestly I haven't looked back.
Awesome. Yeah, that's pretty much the first question that I had for you, Mitchell, and you already touched on it. Was I just wanted to have you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into traditional and made that switch. Anything in particular that made you want to go traditional over the compound, or?
Well, for me, Chad, I shot competitively in the IBO with compounds all throughout high school. So I became pretty efficient with the wheel bows, and actually lost interest in bow hunting for a little while. And so with I shot a couple 3Ds with some traditional guys, and they're like, Mitch, you should try this. And I shot it, and then I went on eBay and ordered my first my Black Widow. I actually got a really good deal on it from a guy in Illinois. And started shooting it. Got my first Robin Hood that summer. And then just went, sold all the wheels, and went. It was awesome.
Great. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat right now myself, and I've been talking to you, in the past few weeks and stuff, and we chatted a little bit about our situations, and I've currently in the process of making that switch myself. I've been doing it now for about 5 months. But the next question I had for you, Mitchell, is I was going to have you tell us what your current setup is, everything from your bows to your arrows, and what broadheads you like when you're hunting.
I run a couple setups, but my current setup, we'll say, when I took off to Nebraska for my turkey trip, I ran a 58-inch Super Shrew Deluxe, one of the older ones actually built from Ron LeClaire. Picked it off God Gang several years ago. Diamond is snake back and everything. 55 or 28. I pull about 27, 28. So I'm getting 53, 54 pounds. Arrow-wise, that bow really likes about 550 grains, just for my shooting style and how I anchor for where I look where it shoots. I ran all the way down to about a 500 grain arrow for Wyoming, where I get a little more trajectory out of it for my pronghorn hunt, which was successful as well with a pass-through with a woodsman head. But the turkey trip, I ran a gold tip 55-75 traditional with 190 grain Simmons tree shark, so it's about 2 inches wide. Standard, I just run 3-fletch 5-inch shield cut. That's probably my favorite setup for turkeys. That's what I'll be running for Easterns as well here in Iowa. My whitetail setup's a little bit different. I run a smaller broadhead cutting diameter. I'll drop down to a 150 grain to 175 with weight in my inserts. I run the 175 grain tiger shark from Simmons, and then actually last year I hunted exclusively with the 150 grain werewolves from Eclipse. All screw-in style, which I've had a lot of luck with. And then I also run carbons just for the ease of tuning. I have hunted with bamboo and cedars in the past. I just come back with carbon just so I can quick change my points out if need be.
Right, very nice. Yeah, I'm actually, well, at the moment, planning on shooting cedars myself, and I'm getting pretty good, flight characteristics as, right now, and so I plan on doing that route. But now, Mitchell, I also wanted to have you tell us and all the listeners. Could you kind of go over what your any specific practice regimen that you use for traditional bow hunting?
I'm fortunate enough to have about 15 yards in my basement. So I shoot this a couple times a week. I start about 5-10 yards and then work back to 15. And then once a week, you'll probably catch me outside at the local 3D range if the weather permits. I don't do anything real crazy. I don't shoot a lot compared, I think, to other shooters as I've seen on like Facebook. I don't shoot every night, and you'll only find me shooting 5 to 10 arrows. If I find something in my form that's changed, I'll shoot more arrows if necessary. I just come to find out that the more I shoot personally, the more it gets into my head. And as we all know, archery is 98% mental, 2% physical. So if you get your body programmed, it's just all upstairs. I've touched a lot of articles. You have a happy mind, happy heart, you'll have happy shooting. So I really take that into play, and that's another reason why instinctive or traditional archery with that instinctive shot is just so in tune with me and what it is, and it's what I've become as a bow hunter. Using the instinctive style with the stick bow is just for me.
Awesome. Now, Mitchell, I got a question for you that actually just popped into my mind, and it's kind of a personal question that I wanted to ask you because, like I told you before, I've only been shooting traditional now for in between 4 and 5 months. Now, when you first made that switch and went from compound to traditional, were you staying on that same kind of only shooting 5-10 arrows a day kind of practice regimen, or were you shooting more when you first got into shooting traditional?
Good question, Chad. I shot more just I think for the initial love and then where I was in life. I think it was a lot of almost, you could say, therapy for me. And I think that's also what the greater connection with traditional was for me. And it wasn't just shoot a stick bow, it's a new challenge. It was a lot more mixed in with just switching from wheels to stick. Stick bow shooting traditional and instinctive archery has become, a huge part of my life, and I think it's honestly made my life better all around in all aspects. I shot a lot more in the beginning, and now that I have my form and my style, my anchor, if I shoot those 5 to 10 arrows and everything's still correct, unless I'm out with friends, that's all you're going to see me shoot on a daily basis.
Okay, great. Yeah, because, I brought that up because, like I said, I'd never even shot a traditional bow until November of this past year. And so when I first made the switch, I was shooting, a lot. I was probably shooting on average maybe, probably 80 to 100, maybe a little more arrows a day. And I was doing that because I was just trying to get reps in to try to figure out what my style was going to be. And, and now here I am 5 months later, and I feel I've developed kind of my own personal way I want to shoot. And I've noticed that my own shooting is has been scaled back now to only shooting maybe 10, 15 arrows a day, because I do kind of have a basis for what I want to do, and I have developed some basic skills with the traditional equipment. So that's why I asked you that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I love shooting, don't get me wrong. It's just when it comes down to it, there's certain days I'll come down and I'll shoot more arrows, most certainly. Or like when I'm tuning a new bow or getting a string shot in or a new broadhead or arrow setup that I like to. I've built probably, I might have 8 different arrow setups in my archery range right now that I've built and changed over the years.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good, a good starting point, for anybody that's, maybe just getting into traditional, I mean, maybe that's something they want to do when they're first, starting out shooting. Now, Mitchell, I also wanted to ask you, are you a complete instinctive shooter, or are you a gap shooter?
I have no clue. I like to say I'm instinctive. I think when it comes down to my hunting and my shooting trees, yeah. I mean, in the basin, I kind of know where my point is. I guess I kind of base my point on shooting for what I'm tuning to make sure I'm, the spine's correct. And watch my arrow, of course. I don't do a lot of paper tuning, so I just kind of, my point of aim. But, like, for the turkey in Nebraska, I couldn't tell you where I put the arrow, where I put anything. All I know is I launched an arrow, and it hit within an inch of where I was looking. So I'd like to say instinctive. It's kind of hard to argue for me. All I know is whatever I do, it's successful.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just curious, what your, kind of what your aiming style and technique was, because I've been actually reading some articles, online about, different ways of, aiming with the traditional equipment. And I know, some guys call themselves gap shooters, where they're more in tune with where their point is in relation to the animal or target, and some guys just completely block it out and look solely at the target or what they want to hit, which is kind of what I'm doing right now. And I was just curious kind of what your thought process was when it came to getting that arrow on target.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I look at where I want to hit. I always, before I leave for hunts or anything, I always tell myself, aim small, miss small, pick a spot. And then, looking at deer, first thing I come in, I try to, like say on a deer I know I'm going to shoot, or a turkey, I'll try to pick something out like, a muscle behind the shoulder, or, misplaced hair. And that's what I focus on, and so, yeah.
Yeah, very nice. I'm doing the same thing here with my own shooting, and I think the vast majority of the traditional shooters would probably agree there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Mitchell, the next question that I wanted to ask you is I wanted to kind of get now into some of the meat and potatoes of the hunting tactics that you employ. My next question is simply, when you're going about, scouting a new piece of hunting property, or even if it's a piece that you've been hunting before, what are some of the principles that you use when it comes to scouting? And is there anything that's traditional archery specific when it comes to your scouting?
Chad, I think this is where it kind of comes. I mean, if you're a good hunter, you're a good hunter. And what equipment you take, it matters. When I shot wheels, I set my tree stands a lot differently. So now that I shoot traditional, I think I'm more honed in on, the dominant trails, and then definitely trees for, limb clearance, because that's a lot bigger issue with our style of bows. So when I go into a property, I do run cameras. I enjoy it. It's a great tool. I look at it as inventory of the area. I don't pattern deer off it at all. I don't have enough cameras to do that. I shed hunt a lot, so I'm in my timbers in March, and I learn a lot about my property. A new property I picked up last fall. I actually learned more this year. Excuse me. I learned more this year shed hunting about my property, and it really opened my eyes to it. So getting in the field in the off season to learn your property, I think, is very crucial. And that's kind of how I first approach my property. And then I'll set cameras. Probably in June, I'll get cameras out this year over Mineral in my travel areas and staging areas that I've established through finding sheds and just kind of, looking at my topos and finding my benches and saddles.
Very nice. Now, yeah, I mean, I've read a lot of articles and and seen other videos, and it's one kind of common theme that I've been noticing. A lot of your successful hunters, no matter what weapon of choice they have, it seems like a lot of successful guys use that, very early springtime as a major, portion of their time scouting for the upcoming season.
Yeah, no, yeah, Ken, it's exactly right. To especially get on big deer, it's more crucial, I think, to be in there now. And then I'll actually set my stand right after turkey season, and when the landowner lets me get back in there, especially for my couple big buck habitats. And I'll set my cameras with 8 gig to 16 gig cards, and then I will not check them again until probably hunting season this year. Last year I actually messed up and went in and busted my target buck, my big buck that I really wanted. And I'm pretty sure I put him nocturnal actually before season due to my setting tree stands and busting through there scouting. So really using this time now, even turkey season, use that time to kind of learn your area. And man, it gets you out there just more.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Mitchell. And I'm probably as guilty of it as much as anybody. It's so hard to kind of stay out of the woods, in that late summer time period when you want to be out. A lot of guys want to be out there scouting, trying to learn some things about what the deer are doing. But like you mentioned, if you can figure that stuff out, March through April, it just seems like a lot of guys are having more success at certainly big deer with using that approach for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I always look at it like this: you're hunting them in their house. You're gonna know when somebody's in your house, and that's the same thing with them. The wiser bucks just remember you longer, especially the buck that's actually on the main picture. He's a 7.5-year-old, and I had not hunted that deep into the timber until that day. We sat and observed those travel routes, and we just waited for the rut, and we were just going to slip in there when the wind was perfect. And the first night that I got the correct wind, I went in, set up on that travel corridor, and 20 minutes before end of legal light, I arrowed him. So I was a big believer in staying out of your core areas until the time was perfect. Unless he can slip, unless that buck is going to slip up earlier.
Very nice. Yeah, I would. It's your logic sounds to be spot on. From what I can tell. Certainly did a great job there with that buck for sure. Now, Mitchell, another question I had for you is I was curious. Do you hunt primarily from stands? Are you hunting primarily off the ground? And what stands specifically, and what ground blind specifically are you using on your hunts?
I do 95% of my hunting from a tree stand. I just run the lone wolf alphas just because they're lightweight. As the white knuckle guy calls them, Todd, he says the run and gun setups. So I do a lot of that on my ground just because of the neighbors can slip in and borrow my stands permanently. So the run and gun setup just kind of became a favorite of mine for some of my properties. Otherwise, I hunt out of ladder stands on my properties. I know that they will not be permanently borrowed. Okay. And then as far as ground hunting, it's one of my dreams is to harvest a mature buck off the ground. And this year I actually have the opportunity in the terrain for me to, I think, actually pull that off. I'll be setting up a double bowl, but I'll actually build an outer blind of timber around it, just so the deer kind of get used to a boxy figure in their house. I mean, there again, it's their house. They're going to notice those things. So I'm going to build that actually during turkey season, and then I'll actually split my double bowl for that added scent, movement, containment. And the double bull provides that big open window. I run the Dark Horse. So those are kind of my two go-to products for tree stand and ground hunting.
Okay, awesome. Now, just one quick follow-up question I had there. So essentially what you're saying is you're going to construct kind of a natural ground blind out of vegetation and tree limbs and stuff initially, and then later on, come closer to season, you're going to tuck the actual double bull blind in at that time, correct?
Yeah, exactly. It's something that's kind of started, I don't know, I know I'm not the first person to ever do it, but it's kind of popped into my head. So I can slip in there, pop it up for the weekend, then I hunt down there, because that property is about 2 hours away from me, from where I live. And then again, I do not want to leave a blind up just due to the sun fades them and the chance of them being stolen. I just prefer to remove that chance.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I actually never even thought of doing that much, but I can definitely see where, having the natural kind of vegetation ground blind initially would certainly get the deer accustomed to the shape of that object being there, and then you tuck the ground, the double bull in or whatever ground blind later on, and the deer really aren't going to associate that major change or that major shape change to that specific area.
Yeah, it's just it's less shocking. It's just like your wife slipped into the new picture in the room. You don't favor it as much. It takes you longer to find it.
Yeah, very well said. Now, Mitchell, another question I had for you is I wanted to just kind of get your take on. I wanted to ask you if your hunting strategies changed throughout the season, and if so, how is that the case?
I kind of touched base on it earlier, Chad. With my hunting strategy early in the season, if I have a buck on camera that I know I can get on early, I'll hunt him. Like a couple years past, a buddy of mine would get pictures of a buck hitting a water hole. Early on in the season, we had a really hot summer. A lot of water dried up, so we focused on water holes, and then the travel routes to those. He was actually hitting them during daytime, and a friend of mine actually missed him. And then early on, I don't hunt my big bucks properties. The bucks, the big ones that I've known. I hunt my other properties. I shoot my does, and then I'll actually hunt stands, like I call them observation stands, where I can shoot my does, and actually, bucks won't come in, just not as dominantly. So I'll hunt that first couple weeks, shoot my nose, keep my freezer full, and then I'll slip in about pre-rut, and then I'll start hunting that stand that I placed in April, if the wind's right, and then I'll keep hunting that, and usually I pick a tree, and I'll mark that tree, and then I'll climb up there for the first time, usually about late October. Here in Iowa, we have that pre-rut kicking in. They're responding to grunt, as well as antlers. And then I'll actually save my favorite trees until that second week of November, where it's just big travel corridors the does are running through, because my bucks will be chasing them. I try to find what I call the sorority houses, where all the girls are, because that's where you'll find the boys come to rut.
Yeah, very well said. Now, so I'm just kind of piecing together kind of some things you've been saying there. So essentially, what you're doing is early season, you're hunting your properties where you probably don't have at least knowledge that there's a big buck hanging around. You're hunting those areas, shooting the does, getting your freezer full, and you're kind of just waiting for the conditions and for the time of year to be right to jump into your locations and your better properties where you've either got a big buck on camera or know of him being there, or where the habitat's kind of more conducive for the big bucks, correct?
Yes, yeah, that's spot on. But again, I'm very fortunate to have the property that I have. I cannot stress that enough. I have been very fortunate with the properties that I've lined up locally and throughout the state to have that opportunity. I got good friends that don't have that. So I can't always say that that's the best. I know that's not conducive to everybody's hunting style or availability.
Right, right.
So I just want to touch on that because, for other hunters, there again, if you have a good stretch of even public, get farther back in. I've been studying some public this year to hunt actually, and find your saddles and your benches, and then again slip in there now and do your scouting. So when you go in there, you go in there once, you walk past all your human sign. That one day in November, you throw your tree stand up. I mean, I know some guys have put some big deer down, and put some big does down, whatever your trophy is. In those times when it's that first time hunted, and it's further past where these people walked. They've known where to set up. They're not walking in blind. Big bucks can fall just as easily on public as they can on private. They're out there.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think kind of the one kind of major, the one thing that always seems to be in common is that it seems like these larger bucks are being taken in areas, rather it's private land or rather it's public land. These bucks seem to be at least more consistently being taken in areas which are simply seeing less human activity.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think
exactly.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's certainly worth stressing.
And then then real quick on late season, it's food source. For Iowa, it's you find the hot cornfield and try to get between them and the food. When they're sleeping and when they're eating, get between it. For late season, that is literally for us is like the only option.
Yeah, that's pretty consistent with up here too. I mean, I'm up here in New York State, and same thing. Late season, you certainly want to be as close to food as you can or in between it. Yeah, good point. Now, Mitchell, I actually didn't have this question on the outline, but it's something that just kind of popped in that I wanted to ask you. What's your take on scent control and scent eliminating sprays? I mean, do you use that stuff for what's your thought process and all that stuff?
Yeah, I do bring my compound. I don't call it compound, but I bring a lot of that into play. I just use Hunter Specialties. It's actually the company's based here out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I use the Fresh Air, so I wash all my clothes. I hang dry them. I store them in scent-free bags. If I still want the wind, I mean, a bad wind's a bad wind. I don't care if you were wearing a scent lock suit and whatever. They're gonna pick you off because you forgot to brush your teeth or whatever. It doesn't matter if you're not hunting the wind, unless that buck is love drunk or whatever, or walks on your side that day in and day out. If you're not hunting that wind, it doesn't matter what you've done with your clothes or whatever.
Yeah, I would agree with you wholeheartedly there. I've kind of always been, one of those guys that religiously washes his clothes and scent away and, do all the things, but I can count, it seems like every time I have, well, for me, pretty much any deer that's mature, whether it be a buck or a doe, pretty much any deer older than, a yearling per se, if they're downwind of you, they, 99 times out of 100 are going to get you,
Yeah. But I mean, I honestly, I think if the wind switches, I have had times where I think the wind switched, midday a little more than I wanted, and I stayed in the stand and still had, a deer coming. I think the scent control will help. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll always spray down. I don't care if they prove that it's inefficient. I'll still mentally have to spray down.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And like I said, I think if anything, even if it gives you a little bit more confidence, then it's worth doing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, good point. Now, I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, Mitchell, but I wanted to have you kind of go back over again because, and the reason why I put this question in here is because, I mean, I've yet to even take a shot at a live animal with my traditional bows, but I've already kind of like, put myself in that situation mentally, like how am I going to get through this shot now that I'm shooting traditional as opposed to my compound. I just kind of wanted to have you maybe kind of explain in greater detail, kind of like what your thought process is and how you get through the shot sequence when the moment of truth comes and you've got that animal in range and you're getting ready to take your shot.
Well, first I make a decision if I'm gonna attempt a shot, and then I start picking, what window I'm gonna shoot, what shooting lane I'm gonna pick them out of, him or her. Say for instance, it was like a perfect scenario. I had a doe coming in, mature doe, this fall, and she kind of came through one window, kind of quartering towards, and I put my bow up, like I'm looking like I'm going to take the shot, and then, I opted for her to walk around the tree. It's going to be a little bit further, but I was going to have that broadside a little bit quartered away. My preferred shot, straight broadside. So she came up. If I had to put a range on it, I'd put it about 18 yards. Then I literally just raised my bow. I start focusing right behind the shoulder. This one just happened to be, I don't know, I just picked about midway up, focused on a spot. And I come back, and I draw and come to my anchor, and then I'm just focusing, and I literally just pull through. And I'm still, my bow's still up as I'm hearing the thump on the animal, that ever so sweet sound. And so I've shot, that's my favorite style. But I can honestly say on that turkey in Nebraska this year, that was literally not a snapshot in the style of, I came to anchor, but I can't tell you much about the shot just because it happened so fast.
Yeah, I wanted to have you just explain that because, and I think ultimately, everybody that's out there hunting with traditional bows, and even if you're a compound shooter, no matter what you're shooting with, it just really, I think it's going to come down to just developing your own style that works for you and practicing that so that when the moment of truth comes, like you mentioned, it just happens,
Yeah. Well, I always say, I've worked in a sporting goods store and been on the archery side for be going on 12 years this fall. So I've probably instructed over 100, 200 shooters or more, compound mostly. But I always stress this: the more you shoot correctly, you become a robot. So when it comes down to time, when it comes down to that moment, that few seconds of all the hours and all the weeks you put into it, it's those few seconds. Literally, your brain doesn't turn off, but you go into the mode that you've been training for, and everything just kind of comes together. So I believe in that too, but I also know that there's a shot process. You practice it on the range, you're going to execute it well in the tree stand or on the ground. But as long as you're executing it the same, that's crucial, and being there mentally.
Yeah. I've talked to several, traditional, bow hunters and shooters now in the last 5 months, and kind of the common theme that I'm hearing from everyone is that, the biggest thing is, shooting the same way every time, so that you're building this muscle memory, and like you said, almost kind of turning into a robot when that shot comes.
Yeah, exactly, and it's just the execution of the shot. And even going through the shot in your head before you actually take the shot on the target and rehearse it mentally that way, and then executing it. It's like writing a program on a CNC machine and then actually watching it work. It has to be done, and it just helps you mentally prepare for the shot and then execute the shot, and you'll have, I think, a lot more success that way.
Awesome. All right, Mitchell, I've got one more. Well, I got a few more questions for you, but the last one I had here on the outline is I wanted to, if you could give, a couple of tips to a traditional bow hunter, whether they be a new time, a new traditional bow hunter, or even a seasoned traditional bow hunter, if you could give those guys and gals a couple of tips to be better traditional bow hunters, what would those be?
Oh, wow. I guess for me, what I've learned through the years of traditional, from helping new people come in and shooting with people that, have been shooting stick bows longer than I've been alive, is keeping it fun, and never getting down on yourself. We've all heard of it, this target panic test, and worried about my group size, and it's not as good as Mitch's or Chad's or Fred's or Mike's. This is your adventure with stick bows. It's not anybody else's. Do not compare your trophies to anyone but yourself. You can always improve your shooting. I have friends that are a lot better shots with a stick bow than me. Always have somebody in mind that's better than you so you can improve with the shot. You can always learn something. Old dogs can learn new tricks. If you think you know it all, you don't. Especially, I learned that the hard way. I thought I could do everything myself. I bought Mastering the Bear Bow and all those videos I've watched to help learn. So for me, just enjoy it, I guess, would be kind of my tips.
Awesome. Those are some great tips, Mitchell, and I certainly couldn't agree more. I think keeping it fun is the most important way to become better at it. Now, Mitchell, I posted earlier today, actually, I posted on a couple of the traditional archery and traditional bow hunters groups on Facebook, actually. I put out there that I would be talking to you today for this podcast, and I asked if anybody had any questions, and I had a couple questions come in that I wanted to ask you. The first is from William Hoover, and William's question is, he saw in the promotional photo that you were wearing the ASAT camo pattern, and he was wondering if that's your favorite pattern, and if so, why that is.
Well, William, I fell in love with ASAT a couple years ago. I like things different. Just like how I left the wheel bows and all the technology, I left the concept of real tree and mossy oak, that there were pictures of leaves and branches, and kind of went to the basic, just colors and shades. Deer are colorblind, so I think you blend in just as easily. I guess it's my favorite just because it is different, and I feel like I can get away with a little more movement with the ASAT, and then when on the ground, I think it's insane. I've had people walk past me on the ground while hunting. I've had people look up in my general area, and as long as I didn't move, I didn't get picked out. As long as deer, they haven't picked me out. So I guess I get busted a lot less wearing the ASAT, so that's where my confidence comes from in that camo. And I really like First Light merino wool. And this is kind of the camo I fell in love with, and so I wear a lot of ASAT as much as I can.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually picked up their, I saw it for the first time actually last summer, and I actually ended up picking up I got the ASAT 3D leafy suit, and yeah, I agree. I think it's a great pattern, and it seems to blend in exceptionally well on the ground, I would say, too.
Yeah, it's multiple terrains. If you hunt different states, like I'm just starting to, I've blended in Oklahoma, I can blend it in Nebraska. Unless it's super green, I guess it'd probably be the only time that maybe it wouldn't work real well for your color, for your turkeys. But still, then again, if you have something in front of you as cover, I think you disappear just as easily as wearing anything else.
Awesome. All right, well, I appreciate you taking the time to answer that question. I had one more come in for you. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. This question came in from Matthias Kasperson, and his question is, he wanted to know if you've ever stalked animals while bow hunting, and if so, he wanted to get your thoughts on stalking animals.
Matthias, for where I hunt, mostly spot and stalk is very limited due to our timber sizes, I guess. I have successfully stalked a doe and actually a turkey. Where the scenario came out, I used land features. They're very conducive for stalking. And I think with stalking, that's mapping out how you're going to stalk to the animal and keeping the wind is crucial. Especially for your Midwestern, I think out west. Like I just watched South Cox's DVD, stick bows in the backcountry, when that ground is insane for stalking. Getting above them in those big cliffs, they can't see you. So in the right terrain, I think spot and stalking is a great plan to have, or tactic to have in your bag of tricks. Even as you're slow walking, if you move slow enough and be quiet enough, a nice slow walk through the woods can actually produce shot opportunities as well. Even a small game as your rabbits, all the way up to whitetails. I've had deer actually come investigate my sound and shot does that way. And I've had bucks come in. Mostly I always have my buck tag's always full, though, when the bucks come investigate, so I can't say that I've been successful on the ground with a buck. But yeah, Matthias, it's a great trick to have in your bag, as long as you read your terrain, proper footwear, proper clothing, keeping that wind in the right direction where you need it to be. And most certainly, it's a very effective tool.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. I actually experimented quite a bit last year myself with ground hunting, still hunting kind of method, and I was actually shotgun hunting most of the time because we have a pretty long gun season here in New York. But I got within easy shooting range of several deer throughout the season, and like I said, I think it's certainly at the very least something that every hunter would want to at least have in their bag of tricks in case the situation arose where it became necessary to use.
Yeah, I carry a big, this touch on actually I carry a big pair of wool socks in all my hunting bags when I go to the tree stand, just in case. If you see that big buck bed into the perfect spot or that doe that you need or want to harvest, I always carry extra thick there wool socks so the thorns don't get my feet as easily when I take my boots off.
Awesome. There's a great tip that I'm going to start doing myself, Mitchell. I can definitely see where that would certainly help out. Well, Mitchell, we're up on time, and I'm out of questions for you. But I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to share with us your insights on your tactics. And I know I certainly picked up a thing or two, and I'm sure all the listeners would agree.
Yeah, and Chad, thanks for having me. I would like to say, everybody, we shoot sticks. But, always open people arms if they shoot a bow or not in the hunting world. And if anybody has any questions, definitely, post up on Traditional Bowhunter page where you guys saw these posts, and I'll try to reach them or direct them towards Chad, and Chad can definitely get that question relayed to me. Always looking to help others. And if you have some tips for me, even what you heard here, you think I can improve on, definitely please send them my way.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'll certainly do that, Mitchell. I'll certainly get any questions that I field, to you, and then back to the listener. And like you said, I think the biggest thing is every hunter out there can certainly learn a thing or two from another hunter. So
exactly.
I think that's very important to stress. And you've certainly been successful, over the years as a traditional bow hunter, and I certainly felt that it was a good idea to have you on the show, to have you, share your insights with us.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it greatly. I look forward to the future listening to it. So.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks again, Mitchell.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
All right, guys. Well, there you have it. A look back at my recent interview I had with Mitchell Glantz from Iowa. Mitchell is a great traditional bow hunter. He's been very accomplished the last several years, and I know I certainly picked up a few tactics there from Mitchell, which I plan on employing in my own traditional bow hunting this year. And I hope everybody who tuned into the show also picked up a thing or two which can help them this year in their own traditional bow hunting. I've only got one last reminder for everybody. If you enjoy what we're doing here with the show, I would really appreciate it if you could jump on over to iTunes, leave us a quick review. It's going to be a great way for me to not only increase our audience here with the podcast and get the podcast to more people so that we can help more people out, but it's also going to be a great way for me to continue to get great guests like Mitchell Glantz here on the show. And as always, I want to thank everybody who took the time to tune into this week's show. I'm going to see you next weekend right here on an all-new episode of the TradCast.